Whether you're healthy or not, it won't make a difference to me because honestly, it won't make a difference to you either. And in 7 days from now, the world will find out what happens when the man who doesn't mind dying meets the man who doesn't mind killing him.
You're tuned into Too Sweet Elite with Andrew and AJ, presented by the AEP.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting of Too Sweet Elite, another exciting edition of Too Sweet Elite. You're here with your boy, Big Match AJ, All Elite Andy, and as always, every week, or not every week, but it seems to be almost every week, we've got some great guests with us. This time we got both of them. We got Johnny and Zebo. How you guys doing, Johnny? How you been? Happy to hear it. Happy to hear you're doing well, man. How about you, Zebo? Yeah, brother. I like it. I dig it. I dig it. Last night was great, right? A great show. Like, before we even get into the news and everything, that's kind of what I wanted to touch on, just the thoughts overall on the show in general. Like, how would you guys rate it? How would you rate last night's Blood and Guts out of, like, a 1 to 10 in the whole show in general, not just the match? Fair enough, AJ. What do you think, Zebo? 8.4. There we go. I like it. I would probably go right around in the 8 range, a little bit higher than AJ. Not really in the 9 range, but I thought the show was really great. I think there's it gives us a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, kind of how they set it up and taped it. And the show itself ended up being a one-match show if you were someone who attended it live, which I think is an interesting thing in and of itself. I don't know. I mean, apparently that was advertised pretty well to the people who were buying tickets, and I hope that's the case. Because to me, I didn't know that's how they were going to do it. I never really even had the idea that that's how they could do it. I never thought, like, that's what they should do. So I don't know how I would feel as a fan attending that show live. You would love it for the event of the match, right? But if it's only about an hour, I don't know. And apparently, like, according to the news, there was 5 fans who wanted their refunds. 5 of them. Solid 5 out of 1,500. That's almost a percent, right? But no, I wouldn't have been on the realm of people asking for a refund prior to the match. But it's interesting. It's an interesting concept, interesting thing AEW did, especially as they increased capacity for the fans of this show too. They brought it up a little bit more to scale. Maybe they taped some stuff afterwards. I guess I wouldn't know that for sure either. What did you guys think of it though, Johnny? What did you think of them doing it with this type of format by doing the pre-taped show for the fans in attendance, letting them watch essentially the pre-taped show as we did, and then the Blood and Guts match happened live?
Just 2 brings big. So, like, it's a lot of setup. So it made sense to me to, do pre-tape stuff, just have one live event match, because there's too much setup involved with this type of big match.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's a fucking War Games match, dude. If you're asking for your money back after, like, you saw a war, you're like, fuck you.
It's bloody. It's like they busted their ass. Like, even no matter what you think about the finish, like,
it was like a 50-minute match.
Yeah, 50-minute match. It was like they busted their ass doing it regardless. So it's like,
yeah,
we can get this out of the way right now. That it's not a higher rating for me, and I can get why people rated it lower because of the ridiculous amount of commercials. I legit was sure every time that I'm like, this has to be the last commercial break this hour, right? And they would still squeeze another one in. And it was like, what in the hell is happening with the commercials?
Yeah, I could not even imagine watching the show and that match, of course, specifically with commercials. I watched the show afterwards. I was at the baptism, as I had talked about, so I kind of had the fortunate experience, I would say, of not watching it, having to see stuff in picture in picture. Yeah, the what I got afterwards was something without commercials, so it made it much easier to consume.
I did the same thing. I watched it with a friend earlier today who hadn't seen it. And I watched it on the fight stream because I was like, I bet this match fucking rules without commercials.
Yeah.
And it did.
No, yeah, I watched it with commercials too, but I watch on a stream TNT drama. So, like, I always mute it when it's picture in picture, so I can always catch the action no matter what.
But they're
I
like
could
38.
tune it
It was
out.
like 38 minutes into that second hour, right? They're like solidly in blood and guts. There's a break, and I'm just like, all right, well, they're gonna come back from this break. They're gonna have like 20 minutes, and they're just gonna like ball out for the last 20 minutes, right? 10 minutes later, another freaking break, and during that is when MJF like climbs the cage, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
come the hell
Like a commercial
on.
during the setup to the ending. That's terrible.
And that's when I'm
Yeah.
watching it in picture. I'm like, well, I know what the finish is now because they're doing it during picture in picture.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Jesus, like, yeah, that was just really weird choice. I mean, I'm
It's
happy,
not
like,
their fault. Like they
No.
don't, I don't think they have control over it. to be
I'm
honest.
happy they had that much like advertiser interest, right? Like that's legit, and that's like a good sign for AEW that they're doing really well. But holy shit, did they space those out really poorly?
Yeah, it was a tough break, and it was something like, as I'm watching it, because I hear Excalibur throwing to commercial, I'm like, wow, we're really going to commercial during this. Like, let me pay attention to what people in commercial are getting in picture or what they're missing out on, and sort of just take that in. And to me, I was like, wow, that's very interesting, and I could understand why people who watched it just on TV with the commercials would be like, well, this didn't hit as well as I'd wanted it to, especially with the finish coming off a little bit.
Yeah,
Just not what people were expecting, I guess.
a little hokey.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that when we run through the show. But I think in terms of what they delivered for a show last night, I was very, very much entertained. It felt essentially pay-per-view worthy. Built up to next week incredibly, I think. Next week's card looks amazing for the amount of people tuned in. So, yeah, I think they did a good job with that. I thought it was very funny that any people were like, I want a refund right now. And want to, like, dang, dude. Out of 1,500 people, I guess that one group of 5 isn't much. But yeah, I just was very surprised by that. They've also mentioned they're going to full capacity for the pay-per-view, something we speculated on a little bit here on the podcast. Makes a lot of sense. So I assume there'll be tickets on sale soon for that because they couldn't have sold them all out yet.
I might go. I don't know.
You should, dude. Might as well. You're right there.
That would rule, man.
You might as well.
Should be having my eyes open, like, oh, there's AJ. I saw him in that one shot.
If I have enough money, I will.
Yeah, dude, you should. I encourage you to. AEW shows are fun, but pay-per-views are always amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to. I even was like, is there a way I can make it out to that? Because I'm just itching to get to some wrestling. Unfortunately, not to the pay-per-view, but I'm gonna be seeing some wrestling soon anyway. But yeah, and they're talking about touring anyway, so hopefully we'll be seeing AEW just kind of getting on the road, maybe getting closer to wherever, And it's obviously going to be places that have a little bit more of an open capacity with COVID restrictions and stuff. Bittersweet for people in Jacksonville, especially. Like, you got to see AEW for, dang near a year now?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a couple of fans who have been to a lot of those shows, so... If I was out there, I would have been. I don't know. This guy AJ, he could have been. But...
Well, they even had that season pass.
Oh, hey, wait. There's another.
Got like the big package of tickets. So.
Let's bully Johnny too.
Yeah, oh, God. I guess
It's like
Johnny-
4 hours away from me, man. I'm sorry.
Whatever.
I'm not going to drive that far out.
Yeah, see. But no, it's still very cool that they're going to be touring soon, and we'll get more fans in general, right? With the pay-per-view, especially having that full capacity show, that's going to have a really interesting feel to it because I know there's a lot of people flying out to that show, big time wrestling fans who just want to go.
Yeah.
They've been dying to see AEW in that capacity, and now they have an opportunity to. I know a lot of people who had already bought their hotel and their airline tickets before even buying tickets because they were so confident it was going to become full capacity and they'd be able to buy tickets. So it seems like it's going to be a very interesting show, not just the general Jacksonville fan base. It's going to be the typical AEW fan base, which is a whole other character to AEW's show, I feel like. So definitely excited for that. The rating was AEW did over 1 million, nothing too crazy. I mean, I guess it is crazy, right? They were the #1 show on television last night, with not a whole lot to compete against, obviously, with that Wednesday night. But shit, that's great, I think.
That is. I like the #1 on cable, over 1 million. Like all those commercials, fucking no way TNT isn't happy.
Yeah.
It almost made me think, like, is this like sweeps week time? Like, I know that's not as much of a thing on TV anymore, but like, if having this big of a show and that many ads, like, I was wondering if they're not trying to like set their ad rate for next year or whatever,
That might make sense. I mean, with what they've been doing and everything, it's just cool to see the consistent number, over 1 million, and obviously doing well for what's going on. It's very interesting that it's #1 on TV with that many viewers. Like, I wonder how long that's going to be a possible thing. Like, because I don't know. I mean, once sports and other stuff come back, it obviously won't be number one, but it'll still be within that top 5 where it's been at. So it's a great look for AEW nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and no Biden aggro this week, right? You having Biden stealing the spotlight.
No Biden. Get him out of here, dude. It's all about Kenny Omega. Jeez.
I'd vote
Biden
for Kenny.
Guy. Yeah, dude.
Kenny for president in
Kenny.
2024.
Kenny the
He's
Canadian
Canadian,
for
but
U.S.
I'll
president.
lose
We'll overlook it for now, Johnny.
He was U.S. champion in NJPW, so
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's
fine,
decent.
yeah.
That's essentially
gotta-
U.S. citizenship.
Just annex Winnipeg before the election, and then we're good.
Yeah, there we go. But that's it. That's really it for news, I think. And obviously, I mean, there's a bunch of news incorporated within the show that we'll talk about, which is basically what we're going to get into. But yeah, title shots announced, number one contenderships announced, discuss everything during the show. So we might as well jump right into it. And they got right into things with Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley teaming up, taking on MT Nakazawa. And it didn't look like Omega was going to make it to the show at first. He pretended he was going to no-show. Don Callis comes out, says Nakazawa is a Japanese legend. He can handle it by himself. And then Mox and Kingston come out and get attacked by Kenny pre-match. This was a pretty solid tag team match. I enjoyed it. Mox and Kingston picking up the win as I anticipated by beating Nakazawa. This was good, and Kenny ran off. He left him behind.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I thought Kenny leaving made sense. To me, I was like, why didn't he do it sooner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured like if he's gonna leave during a match, like he should just not showed up in the first place.
Yeah.
I assume it was just filling time till Blood and Guts. You know, they some of these matches felt like a little longer than they had to be, but it's the live show week, right? Like I always feel like that on a live show compared to tape show weeks.
Yeah, fair enough. This was all right. This was, like I said, I thought the match itself was relatively entertaining. The post-match was good. We have the Young Bucks come out, distracting Moxley and Kingston. The Good Brothers get their attack. This brings out Kenny Omega with Brandon Cutler. So there's going to be some cool footage on Being the Elite. That was the one thing I took away from watching this. Is like they're going to have something interesting there. With Kenny hitting the one-winged angel on Eddie Kingston. So, yeah, it was a good post-match. I feel like maybe they're setting up to potentially do not just a tag team between the Bucks and Kingston and Mox, but maybe even get the Good Brothers involved doing like a multi-tag team match or something.
That would be cool.
It would be an interesting dynamic for Tony Khan to make that match, right? Knowing that the Young Bucks and the Good Brothers are supposed to be a team, but maybe enticing the Good Brothers to turn on them a little bit by chasing a championship, but also putting Moxley and Kingston in a tough position, right? Because maybe they get jumped in the match and nothing really comes of it. So, yeah, like what
I
they're
don't know if
building
they'll
there.
do that, but like, I would be down for it. I feel like they're just gonna have I don't think they're gonna keep going in the tag team direction, is what I should say. I feel
With,
like it's
Mox and Kingston.
Yeah, I feel like it's just gonna be gang warfare. Like they're just gonna be like fighting all of the elite. Like it's gonna be like just them trying to take out everybody.
I kind
feel
of
like
got
if
the feeling
anything,
we
we're
would
gonna
see
have more
the
people
tag
join
title
up.
match. I got the feeling we might see Mox and Kingston team up for a tag title match at the pay-per-view. I don't know why.
That makes sense.
But
Makes sense.
especially
But I
with
don't know if that's like the long-term plan. Like if them being a team.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
well,
thing.
it's true that how long they've been paired together has already kind of surprised
You're
me
right.
because it's worked so well. And Tony Khan in an interview earlier this week talked about how they're like the perfect buddy cop duo. And I think him mentioning that made me think, all right, maybe he wants to put the belts on them because they're not a traditional team, but they did so well by putting the belts on a non-traditional team in the past. It helps keep a main eventer like Moxley away from the main title, but still very much important and sort of almost helps elevate that tag division as well. So, and I don't think they would win, honestly. I don't think that Mox and Kingston would win that match at the pay-per-view, but I think it's kind of where they're building to, would be my guess. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I got the same feeling.
Yeah, and then for the pay-per-view, they announced that we're going to get Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida, so this makes a lot of sense. Glad we're
Hell
getting it announced a couple of weeks in advance just to build up for that, you know?
I'm glad Hikaru Shida will get to lose her title in front of a full capacity crowd.
I would be thrilled with Britt being champion for a while, honestly. Like she's really crushing it, and I for the vast majority of the time she's been at AEW, I didn't give two shits about her, and she's just so good right now. If you're ever gonna put the title on her, like this feels like the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it is her time. Like it's a pull the trigger moment with I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. Time to put the belt on Britt. And the match itself is going to be so amazing either way. I think the fans are very much behind both of these women in their own type of way. And I think fans will also recognize, like, this is Sheeta's first opportunity as a champion in front of a full house, and she'll get that respect, but also it's just the perfect time to then pass the belt on to Britt. I think it's going to create some interesting stuff. The women's division's in a great spot, too, with these two women who have been built up very well. Like, going into that night with the full capacity, I'm very excited to see them get the reception they're going to get, because it's deserved. Like, these two women have carried that division in their own ways throughout this entire pandemic, with Sheeta being champion, and then Britt, even when she got injured, like with the storyline stuff she was able to do, has really been a pillar for that division.
Yep. Yeah, I've said this for like the longest time, was Britt Baker just stepped up so much just since the pandemic started.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like, everyone I knew was kind of like shitting on her ring work, shitting on her character work, and then she just really stepped it up, and she kept on going at it no matter what people said, no matter what the haters said.
I just never bought her as a face. Like, she was, to me, so easy to hate. Like, even the whole, like, I'm a doctor and all that. Like, when you're supposed to be impressed by it, I'm like, no, fuck you. Like, that's not actually that cool. But, like, now that it's
especially
like, now
when
that
it's
she's
being
a heel,
shoved down our throat every week, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And now that she's a heel, it works so much better. Plus, she's finally got the attitude right. Because, like, the initial, like, heel turn, I was kind of like, all right, Britt, I think you're better as a heel, but come on. But now she's got it. Like, she's got the attitude down perfect. The look is right. It's really working for me.
Yeah, I agree. The next match we got to talk about, I had someone that was working for me. I don't know how much he's going to be working for me anymore after taking this loss, but we got QT versus Cody. Cody picks up a victory with the figure 4. I liked the match. It was really good. They started off really hot. Everything was pretty entertaining.
I just don't know why it happened. This is like
exactly. I don't get, why do you give Cody the win here?
Why?
What's he gonna do?
Away? Why do you give the match away now? It's the thing. Like, why now?
Especially with this finish, right? Like, because maybe you do this match, you do a DQ finish, you do like somehow there's no contest, and you build it up for the pay-per-view. This was just, I don't know. I don't know what this was. I don't understand. QT, like, I get it. He wasn't pinned. He had to submit, but even that was like really weak, and he's being lifted up by Like, I was excited when he kicked out of the crossroads. I was like, this is great. Like, he's gonna look super strong coming out of this. Yep. And then he just gets put in the figure 4, and in my mind, I was like, they're not really going to do this. And then they did. I was like, geez, man.
Because he tapped to the figure 4 last week on top of the truck, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, he gets in the figure 4, and I'm like, no, he's ready for it this time. And then he taps again, and just like, the hell?
No, it was rough, man. I hated it. I was like, what the fuck? And I love Cody. I'm a Cody guy. Paul Slayer. Throne Breaker.
He's
great
Paul.
guy.
He's new Paul with this one. That's all this
now
is.
He's new Paul. Now he's just Paul. Now the Slayer's dropped.
Super Triple H.
Right? That was the big thing for me. I mean, like I said, the match was fun. There were a couple of moments where I was kind of like, what? Like, and I might not have just been this match, but definitely this match. I remember Cody was going to hit QT with the weight belt. Bryce is like, no, but then QT hits Cody with the weight belt, and it's not a big deal. There's a couple of moments where I'm like, probably could have been a disqualification there. Arn Anderson shoving QT's face into the ring post was another moment where I'm like, why are we doing all of this outside shit going on?
I did like Arn getting involved, because with Arn getting involved, that was like payback for when QT destroyed him, right? On the actual initial heel turn. So I didn't mind so much, because it was like we saw that happen. That was QT's, like, I said he was going to murder Arn. He did. And this time Arn murdered him back, so,
Yeah,
it's fine.
True. Yeah. They had a cool little spot with the tombstones, too, where they kept reversing out of it.
That was great.
That was
like, again, the match was great. It was awesome. But the finish was the wrong.
Yeah.
It was the wrong match, too. It just shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Well, and then it leads to a Go-Go coming out, hits the right hand real quick, and that's it. So, I mean, to me, I was like, okay, is a Go-Go the focal point of this group? Maybe not the leader, but the point of this group isn't even necessarily to build QT up. It's going to be to build a Go-Go more so than necessarily anyone else in the group, is how I feel, because he's been the one built the best. Camarado hasn't really suffered anything negative, but we saw Solo lose on Dark a couple of weeks ago, right, AJ? And then a Go-Go is like he's the guy in the group to me at this point. So
I agree.
But does anybody buy his sucker punch gimmick? It just looks so bad. He doesn't sell it at all.
I don't know, man. I want to like the guy. it's weird that I dislike him off of the fact he only does one thing and it's just a punch, but it's like...
But he doesn't even do it that well. Like, if it looked like the way Mike Tyson was sucker punching people, like, fine. But he just, like, walks up, like, pulls his hand back and then moves his hand forward, and they're like, oh. It just looks so fake.
It really doesn't help that Mike Tyson's actually appearing on AEW, like, the same weeks he's doing the knockout punch. Like, showing him how it's done. Like you mentioned.
Like, a go-go looks like he's pulling his punch, and, like, that's not how you sell a wrestling move. Like, it just isn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, I still am waiting with a go-go to see kind of what they can build it into, but it's been a weird build for him just overall with this right hand thing. But it's very much, like, it's clear to me we're going Cody versus a go-go, maybe even at the pay-per-view, which would be interesting.
I guess. It's just, what the fuck?
Maybe Cody doesn't...
Because they've been just protecting him so hard. Like, I'm not even sure if, like, he's ready in the ring, but he could surprise us.
I wanted QT at the pay-per-view, Andrew.
I did too, but I don't think it's what we're going to get.
No. My assumption is just that Go-Go's training has not been going well, or he's not doing it hard enough. Like, it's the same reason Jade hasn't been on TV wrestling, right? Like, they both need a lot of work, obviously, but, like, if this is the best thing a Go-Go can do, leave him on the bench for now. Like, he doesn't need to be out if this is all he's got, you know?
Yeah, we'll definitely see how it goes if he does get that pay-per-view match against Cody. It's going to be one we're going to be watching very hard to see what they can turn it into, so we'll see. We got a great, I thought this was a great promo from Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, just talking about Darby Allin and Sting. I thought both guys sounded great, and then Darby interrupting. He does a coffin drop onto Ethan Page, but then gets tossed down the stairs, which looked brutal.
Brutal. Yeah.
Awesome. He sold it great, too. And when it's Darby, like, with him selling it the way he did, like, he very much could have been over-exaggerating, but because we see him do so much dangerous shit, I was kind of legitimately concerned. I was like, I actually rewinded it to watch.
Threw him down the stairs, so yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like, so. I think, like, maybe they stuntmanned him up a little bit, like, here's how to fall down the stairs the best. But, like...
He already knows. He was showing them how to fall down the stairs the best.
He fell down the stairs, dude. Like, they showed it on camera. That dude fell down the cement of the stairs. That's fucked up. Samoa Joe did that one time, remember?
Wait, when he did the drop kick?
Yeah, he did the drop kick on Sting, and, like, he fucking just hit his back right on the stairs. That must
he just got right back up.
Yeah. So, but this was good. I thought this was a good promo, a good segment for Scorpio and Ethan Page, which is the first time I'm probably saying this. And it's not to say anything they've done previously was bad, but this was just good. And Ethan's promo I really liked. Scorpio's promo was fine, talking about how he's the guy now. What did he say? Something about I'm Showtime now or something. So.
Yeah, he talked shit about Sting a lot.
Yeah, he was shitting on Sting.
Scorp versus Sting could be good. I mean, it'll probably turn into be a tag team match.
Yeah.
But I think that if it was a singles match, Scorpio Sky's a great guy to put up against Sting in that position. But
I think the question is, do they tag at Double or Nothing, or is it going to be on Dynamite before that?
Probably Double or Nothing, right?
Yeah. I think that would probably be what happens. We'll have to see how that TNT title match plays out next week, but that would be my guess, is you do that on the pay-per-view, because you probably want to get Sting in a match on the pay-per-view. This has enough build to it, so yeah, I would say that makes a lot of sense. Then we get Britt Baker getting her quick squash match over Julia Hart. This is ridiculous. No, this is ridiculous. Julia Hart lost on Dark the night before. So you just already, like, it's not even a moment of, like, we're going to put in someone who won the night before to give you even a false sense of hope. It was like, no, this girl's getting squashed. And she did. It was lockjaw finish. It was good. I thought it was like a solid squash, what you would expect. I think Britt really needs to take the sling blade out of her repertoire. It just never looks good, especially when Penta usually ends up being on the same show and then does it good, and you're like, oh, that's how that's supposed to look. But otherwise, this was fine. Nothing too crazy. But
it was. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no. Okay, is she like a Hart? Is she in the Hart family? Because they said she's from Calgary or whatever, and I was like, oh.
Doubt it.
Nope. It's like Carl Anderson. It's like he's not an Anderson, but
really? Are you serious? Damn.
Sorry, man.
But it was booked as Britt, in action. So I mean, I think we got Britt in action. My only thing was like, but she hasn't been doing the lockjaw finisher that much, right? And I think for this big of an episode, for her to go back to that, it just feels like regression, because that move is so lame to me, and Well, I'm always like,
wrong.
if somebody did that to you, you'd bite their fingers off. Like you just
No,
bite their
no.
finger.
fully does the mandible claw because you can't bite your fingers
The
off.
nerves, yeah.
Yeah,
Pinching the
nerves.
nerves.
But I'm saying everybody's just like, and like nobody ever tries to fight back and they immediately submit. It just looks dumb to me. But
I can understand
She's
your
been-
thinking. I don't have that issue, but I could understand it.
but she hasn't been doing it for like weeks now. Like building up to becoming #1 ranked, she hasn't used it. Like she's been showing she can do more than just finish people with that.
Special occasions is why.
Now,
And I'm
Well,
just saying,
I'll tell you what I
I've
like
appreciated
about-
that she's had another move. Like she's had other stuff besides that as her finisher. So like her going back to that in action, I'm just like, all right, at least it was over fast, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a Batista bite with a mandible claw attached, so it's like almost as good as Batista bite, but not quite.
Not
Yeah.
quite.
Almost as good.
Right about that.
Yeah,
Almost as good.
almost. But no, this was good. Good little squash match. Britt looks great. Something else I think is great. Technique by Taz is back and done just phenomenally, right? Breaking down Christian's moves. I just think this is a cool way to keep building up the Christian Team Taz thing and also building up Brian Cage's win over Hangman Page without having to do a promo, right? Like, it was a way to remind the viewers of that big thing that happened last week in just a totally different way. Technique by Taz is kind of goofy, but I thought this
It's
was
so
great.
goofy.
It was funny. I enjoyed
It's
it.
funny as hell. I love it.
I enjoyed that he both is like explaining the wrestling moves and like throwing shade. It's just such a good combination.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not even mentioning like Hobbs got hit with the unpretty or kill switch or whatever.
Right.
And he's just being like, look how he flips them.
Yeah, well, of course. He's got to talk about the positives. Emphasize the positives. Downplay the negatives, AJ. Of course.
Right.
So that was good. Good little promo from Taz. And then we get the 4-way tag team match. Varsity Blondes didn't even get a real entrance. I loved that the Acclaimed called the Young Bucks the Young Cucks. At one point, Kazarian almost died. This was a good match, though. This was a solid fatal 4-way tag team match.
Actually,
All
I'm
looked
gonna be
decent.
honest. Did not pay attention. I watched it. I made my eyes look at it. But like, I could not fucking buy that anything was gonna happen in this match other than SCU wins and SCU won.
Of course.
So that's all I really remember.
Also, this is the second episode of Dynamite that my friend's 9-year-old daughter has watched with me. She was here she wanted to see Pineapple, which is what she calls Pinnacle. She said it before she ever heard Jericho call him Pineapple, which is just such a bizarre coincidence. But she wanted to see Pineapple in Inner Circle. And so, like, this was when her attention was starting to flag, was this match. And I
Which is
liked
weird,
it,
right? Because like a fatal 4-way tag match with like young teams, well, the young team in the Varsity Blondes and stuff. Like, there's a reason you would think this would be exciting, but I can agree. Like, my interest was fading, and this didn't even have that typical excitement, I guess you would say, that a 4-way tag can have.
I feel like the problem is there's no way SCU loses it, right? I mean, there's like, if SCU is going to retire, they don't retire after a fatal 4-way. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Why'd they start building that on Dark instead of like Dynamite? The whole
I don't
entire
know.
we lose and retire thing. That's the thing that's like confusing me the most.
Because it's
Well,
really
they
not
brought
all
it back
that.
last-
It's emphasized, but not as emphasized. It feels. The thing about it is, if you've paid attention and you know with Dark, then that's great. Like, you know this has been kind of going on for a while. If not, and they just re-emphasized it on Dynamite a couple weeks ago, you feel like this is a hot shot, not something that has been built up the way it actually has been. So I can understand that. I think the story, it's tough because I don't want to critique this because it's actually like a really good, interesting story
a lot of
that they're
history.
building up in.
Sure.
But it's just one I can't personally buy into whatsoever because you just kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. Like, but it's a great story in the way they've put it together, and I think what can come out of it will be more interesting to someone like me. Like, what happens next week after they lose? Does Daniels or Kaz happen to freak out on one, or do they just go their separate ways and hope the best for each other? There's a lot you could do in that position, so I'm curious to see how it goes, but. Yeah, it's not a story I can get too deep into. Maybe if they were like SC was a bit younger of a team or something where I saw like any potential for them beating, because I never saw them losing this match, but I never see them beating the Bucks next week. Like, there's nothing in me that can buy into that. So
Same.
So it's weird to have like two really great matches that are still entertaining, but I just can't buy into them. The match I can buy into, though, Mox versus Yuji Nagata next week. Mox promo on this match was amazing, talking about how he could still teach Nagata a couple of things, and Yuji's just not, or he's asked, when is Yuji just not going to get up again? So this was a good promo. This was really, really good. Like, Mox did a great job at building up this match for next week. I'm very excited for it, even though I'm not super familiar with Yuji Nagata.
Well, Zivo, on the flip side, you revealed to me there's a whole other promo where Yuji Nagata talks more.
Right. So I've linked it actually in our group chat if you want to catch it later. But yeah, so I saw the NJPW one maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and it starts off identical to like, here's the Death Rider, like, toll that he's taking through in New Japan. And then, Blue Justice is going to jump in and take him on now. And then we had the brief little, like, a little tiny bit of Moxley talking, but then it went to Nagata talking. So when New Japan did the almost identical promo, they gave the like back half of it entirely to Nagata. And then when it's on AEW, Moxley got the back half. So I thought that was kind of like a cool way to balance it out. Now I want to see somebody cut those two together and like cross cut them, because they're both sort of like talking to each other, but they don't talk in the same promo.
That's cool. I didn't know that, but that's really cool to know that New Japan, it's cool to see how they work together, right? Like there's obviously more to it than just like, let's book this match. Like there's more creative stuff to it behind it. So I like that. I'm excited for that
it
match.
being identical at the beginning, I thought they were just playing the New Japan promo. I'm like, oh, okay, and it is until Moxley starts talking a bunch. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. What do you think of the promo, Johnny?
That was excellent. I'm glad to see Nagata again, because I haven't really paid attention to NGPW in a while. I used to watch him quite a bit because he did like the armbar with the eye roll thing.
Mm-hmm.
Big fan of that spot. So that should be a fun match next week. And it's like, what has it been, 20 years since he's been in WCW? That's like their advertising. That's the big advertisement.
You guys called me out last week about like, I bet Zivo's into Nagata from 90s WCW. And yeah, he was legit, man. Like he ruled. So I'm super psyched to see him back on TV.
Good deal. I'm excited to see the match, especially the cross-promotional relationship. And I'm somewhat familiar with Nagata, especially Johnny bringing up that the eye spot and the armbar. I've seen that. I didn't love it, but I know what you're talking about. Kenny Omega had a promo to announce his title match for Double or Nothing. This was very interesting to me because we get the announcement that Pac and Orange Cassidy are going to have a number one contenders match. I suppose this makes sense.
No.
All right. You're right. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But didn't they say these are the top 2 ranked guys? Isn't that how it got put together?
Said, and I guess that's true. I don't know. Hangman was ranked number 1 for weeks. He lost one match, and I guess now he's number 3.
He's not even in the
somehow. He's 3 or lower. Like obviously.
What?
Well,
I'm not saying I want Hangman versus Kenny right now. I want them to wait for that. Yeah. Obviously, this is the right thing to do. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. It's dumb.
It kind of does. I mean, he did suffer a loss. I will say, like when they first announced it, I was like, this is fucking dumb. Like I don't like this at all. This is not. But once Orange came out and they started building up to that, and I just got the energy of that, I was like, this is kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's good for what I'm just saying. Like,
even though because I don't like it.
It felt super random.
I agree with that.
They need like Orange Cassidy to appear in front of Kenny like right now, because like Kenny said, like Pac has like a lot of history with Kenny. Like if they just like if they didn't have Orange Cassidy come out, like it would make it like more up in the air who's going to win next week.
Well, I wouldn't have. No, I would never have doubted that OC was going to win, because Pac and Kenny have fought so many times. Like another Pac and Kenny match is not that exciting. I love watching them. I love watching them wrestle, but it's been done so many times and on pay-per-view.
Care.
I think Pac adds a little bit, to me at least, a little bit more of a credible contender, like someone who might actually win. Orange Cassidy, as great as he is, like I still have no confidence in him winning the title from Kenny. I think it's going to be massively entertaining. Everything that comes from it is going to be great. It elevates Orange Cassidy a ton, I'm sure, but I don't really have as much confidence in him winning. I think that Pac, even though I still don't have a whole lot of confidence in either one of them essentially beating Kenny in that main event spot, I would have more confidence in Pac potentially picking up a shock victory for the title in that situation than OC. I think. But that's kind of my biggest frustration with these two being announced. Is I was like, neither one of these two, to me, feel like potential world champions in AEW right now.
No, this is a throwaway title defense, clearly. But like, it's gonna be Orange Cassidy, he's gonna beat Pac, which will make him look more like a star. Then he's gonna lose to Kenny, but in a good match. And Kenny's got to keep the belts. Like, he's collecting belts. He's got to keep the belts for longer to be the collector, right?
I just would have rathered it, and I guess I don't know what I would have rathered it be, but it's tough. It's tough because I don't love the throwaway title matches on pay-per-view where I feel like going into it, I just have no faith in this contender for the main event title. Like that's my biggest thing is we're going into the main event match. I really don't feel like this guy's gonna win. I had the same feelings when Brody got his championship match at the pay-per-view. Even though it turned out great, it was a decent build and everything, I never really had a whole lot of confidence in him winning the title. It makes it weird for me when that's the pay-per-view match rather than a dynamite match. But
No, I hear you. Yeah.
I think that's what happened. Unfortunately, was like I think they were building up for something else, and then plans didn't turn out well. I think like they were trying to build up Christian, but the fan reaction didn't really work out the way they wanted it to. So they changed plans.
And I almost would have rathered like somehow involving Christian in this, like at this point, because granted I wouldn't have loved Christian being put in that championship match at the pay-per-view. This being the alternative, I'm like, well, fuck. I would have rather Christian got his pay-per-view title match.
Yeah.
I think they're obviously like both Christian and Sting. They built very slowly into AEW, right? So like they're guys that we know can wrestle, like obviously, and they're solid talents. But I think they're trying to not just like overwork them or burn out their story too fast. So like I think Christian obviously eventually challenges Kenny. Like theoretically, Kenny will still have the belt whenever that happens. But I told you back when Christian got introduced and the story with Christian and Kenny came up that I thought Christian could beat Kenny, But we'll see. And I just obviously if he was going to fight him at this pay-per-view, I would say, well, Christian loses if it's at this pay-per-view.
And I would have loved it. That would have been perfect. Like that would have been exactly what I wanted. But this is okay. Like what I am, like I said, when it was announced, I was not very sold on it. But once we see Kenny and OC interact, I'm like, oh man, I'm all in for this, even though it's not the best. So, and something else.
I love that Kenny is just making him look like a nothing, right? And that's great because he's so popular. Like Orange Cassidy's popular enough that like Kenny becomes so much more of a believable heel by trashing Orange Cassidy.
Yeah,
I just think that's so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it comes out, what the result is. Maybe it does end up Pac versus Kenny. It does seem like they're very much foreshadowing Orange Cassidy, but they could do a little bit of bait and switch here, and I don't think many people would be too upset about it. Because Pac versus Kenny, although it's been done before, it would be a fantastic match. And you put a title on the line, because I want to think back to when we saw Pac versus Kenny. I probably came on the show and was like, I think they're holding out for a bigger match where they're going to do and go even harder. So.
I remember you guys talking about it on the podcast because I was a listener back then. And I also remember weeks and weeks of Pac saying, give me my rubber match, Kenny Omega. Give me my rubber match. Just over and over and over and over again for like 3 months until they wrestled. And like, I'm sick of it. I'm done. They wrestled. Kenny won. I'm done with it.
Listen, but you don't say things like, oh, I don't want to see Okada versus Kenny again. Like, that's not, I want to see Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair. No, like, what?
You know what I want to see? Miro versus Darby next week. That's what I'm excited for, AJ. This got me pumped when I was watching, and I was like, finally Miro's getting his title match. This is super exciting. Like I've been waiting so long for this. And then Darby coming off of being thrown down the stairs. Like it feels like everything is being built up for Miro to win the title next week. And finally something really, really good for Miro. I saw when I was looking up the clip at the beginning of the show, I saw like Miro's debut was 7 months ago, and I'm like, holy crap! Like he's been around that long and had like a 5 matches, maybe a bunch of squashes and stuff. But in terms of relative actual importance, as much as he's been a focal point, I'm like, man, this is weird. But I'm excited. That's what got me more pumped for next week.
This is super hype. I'm stoked for this. This is gonna be great. I want to see him squash Darby. I want to see it. I don't want him to squash Darby. I just want him to beat the shit out of Darby for like 10 minutes.
So you want a Darby match? You're saying where Darby he still manages a roll-up win somehow? Like that's how it's gonna go.
No, but I want him to win, though. I want him to like knock his head off his body this time, and Darby dies.
I would love Miro to be the TNT champion, and I just don't think at a limited capacity Dynamite Darby's going to lose the belt.
Fair enough. That's a fair assumption. And my thought is like maybe Ethan Page and Scorp still have an issue with Darby, so they could get involved potentially, destroy Darby in the middle of the match and cause a disqualification, which then Miro sides with Darby, right? Because you guys are in the way of me getting my title, what I want, and then destroys them, and then we see some type of match down the line between all of these competitors or something. Yeah. Like I don't think it's 100% that Miro wins, but I'm very excited that he's getting the opportunity, and I'm pretty confident he could come out the champion, and that's what makes me more excited as a guy who's always been a Rusev Miro guy. Like, this is great. Yeah.
I got no issues with Miro taking the belt. I would be honestly surprised, but we'll see.
And that's what I like about it too. Is it's a match where I don't know who the winner is. Like perfect, exactly what I want. Even with Darby being injured, it like adds more credibility to the idea that Miro could potentially become champion. So, and the whole card for next week is stacked.
I say it would be hilarious if all the times that I predicted Darby would lose the belt when he didn't, that the one time I says he keeps it, that's the time he loses it.
You might be onto something here. I think so. Yeah, the match is awesome. I'm excited for it. How about you, Johnny? Did you say much about this one?
I just love Miro in general. So like I'm just super hyped. I'm just glad he's getting his time to shine after 7 months of slow build. Even though like the Kip Sabian stuff was awesome, it's just
took it time.
Yeah, it took his time. He has to. I think he has to win, or otherwise the credibility of his character is kind of gone.
Unless they do some type of DQ.
DQ finish, like you mentioned. So.
Something to protect that. But yeah, with him talking about chasing championships, and now he finally gets that opportunity, I do feel like he has to capitalize, or something else has to happen where there's outside involvement. So regardless, it's going to be interesting. And then lastly, we got to talk about this blood and guts match and the actual match itself, because there's a lot to discuss. There was a lot of stuff that went on. There were a couple of botches, a couple of great moments, a couple of crazy moments, some bad camera angles, everything you could probably expect from this type of match, right?
Yep.
A lot of blading.
Yeah, definitely. It's blood and guts, bloody. Man. Blood. They need the blood.
Which is weird because Jericho went on Wrestling Observer Radio and was like, "Nah, it's not gonna be so bloody, and not everybody's not gonna be bleeding and shit." And I was like, "He lied."
Maybe not everybody.
Legit,
not
a minute in or whatever, Dax Harwood's laying on the mat away from the camera. I'm like, oh, he's bleeding. Yep. And he turns around and he's got a mask. I'm like, all right, there we go. And then every single Pinnacle person bladed, you know?
Yeah, I think everybody except Wardlow and Hager.
And Hager, yep, the two big dudes. But there was so much in this that this was great. I think that Sammy did look great. I think that we were a little bit off, AJ, in this being the star-making performance for Sammy. I think he looked amazing, but it wasn't what we were anticipating. I think they tried, though,
because they did put him in first.
He owned the opening of that match, though.
He
looked so incredible for the first, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. He was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
He probably had the biggest spot of the match.
There was a lot of good Sammy shit, but there was also a big botch.
That botch, yeah. And then it looked like he was actually a little bit fucked up from it, right? Where he got up and looked a little bit slow to regain his bearings and get stuff back together. But after that, it wasn't like he had major issues. It was great. I mean, he took his opportunity and made the best of it for sure. Oh, and the coast to coast was great. I loved that.
No,
you didn't love the coast to coast.
It was good when Sean Spears hit him in the head with the chair. That's what ruled. I don't care about the Coast to Coast. That wasn't very good. I don't think so. No.
I was happy about the level of weaponry because again I thought the parlay was going to go into some of the rules and they started off with all right, we're going to coin flip, and then it all broke down, right? So I still didn't know coming into that match what the rules were going to be, and then each side shows up with one chair, and I'm like, all right, yes, we got some weapons, but it's not totally over the top. Fine, you know. And I thought they made good use of all of that. That cage, when the cage got revealed. And I saw how they had it lit and everything. It was just holy shit, this is nice. That's one of the prettiest looking TV setups for a match I've ever seen.
And who had the fork? Was it Santana?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was Ortiz. Okay. Fucking, that was great. That was Abdullah the Butcher shit. That was
hell yeah.
Ortiz looked amazing in this match too. A lot of what he did in this match was really, really impressive to me.
They both looked great, actually.
It did. I agree. But in watching, and it's probably going to be a very weird comparison, but watching Ortiz and Santana, I felt a lot like watching Matt and Jeff Hardy, where Ortiz is the Jeff and the excitement aspect for me. Maybe not necessarily the match and the moves and shit, but that was my takeaway. It was a great match though. And the Spanish Fly was crazy. It's when Sammy did that to your boy, that was nuts.
That was. I'm not even going to deny
that was a match.
That was insane. So
yeah.
I really liked the Dead President's makeup too that Santana Ortiz came out in. That's just such a classic look, and it's hell yeah. Plus the prisoner jumpsuits that everybody had in their circle. Yeah. That's a legit look. Yeah, that was cool.
Johnny, you mean the spot of the match wasn't when Jericho got thrown off into the padding?
That was the best one. Sorry.
That was insane, right? I was like, oh man. What a
Didn't
rough.
see that coming from the moment MJF climbed the cage. You know
what really sucked is like immediately after it, they showed it with a good camera angle, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
The camera angle like sucks.
And the
Like,
fact they kept going back to Jericho sitting there, and he's like
Yeah,
talking
he's
with
just
everyone, like constantly opening his eyes, and I'm like, oh, so you're. I mean, I knew you were fine, but we all know you're fine now based upon them. And I was like, you don't have to keep going back to him. Like you could just show MJF celebrating his victory, and don't show us Jericho at all, and I won't have this issue. But then they just kept going back to him, going back.
no,
to him.
it's like look at all the cardboard all around him. You know, but no, Andrew, we were talking about this pre-show that like legit, it's so many times when they do these big spots where somebody gets pushed off like a really high spot and there's an obvious place they're supposed to land. There's an AEW logo he was supposed to land on, right? But it's so close to the cage, and it's just like, do you guys not understand physics? That if you push somebody away from a solid surface, they don't drop straight down. They keep moving away. And like that's where Matt Hardy got the big head hit that time, you know, because he kept going away from where the table was, because the table was under him, but he got pushed away. Right. You know, MJ, like Jericho barely hit the back of that crash pad, honestly, because I was watching it going, that logo is really close. He's not supposed to hit that, is he? His whole body landed past the logo, you know? So again, it's just like, well, at least they made the crash pad long enough.
Well, and that was the thing. A lot of people were comparing the negative criticism to Jericho's spot too, right? It was like, well, you guys saw Matt Hardy almost die and threw a fit, so what did you expect them to do here? And I'm like, yeah, be safe, but
cement. We just wanted to see it differently.
Yeah, I think I think most of the people bitching about it, like us, is like when we complain about it, it's like I didn't mean to say bitching, but I mean when you bring it up, it's like we want it to be safe. We don't want the camera angle.
Make it look cool.
Yeah.
No, like a great example is Sammy's big giant pile driver that he took at Stadium Stampede, right?
That was great.
Like that, and that was well set up because he dropped into a box, and when he landed, we didn't see the landing, and then they cut to the aftermath of him being destroyed, right? But we saw him disappear, and then the next shot is he's dead, right? And that's fine.
Remember when Jeff Hardy did the 30-foot swanton? Like you didn't see him land and hit the guy.
You don't need to. Like, your brain's gonna make it look so much worse than the reality if you don't see it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, exactly. And it's funny you bring that up, AJ, because I remember watching that spot and being like, why didn't we see it? And then you see them and you're like, that doesn't even look like how they fell. But that's why, right? So that way you can make it look good, at least from what you see on camera. So I get what they were trying. And it was the finish is interesting, right? By having them surrender with MJF up there with him. And
I
like,
love the story. I love the story.
So they're all idiots then and don't recognize that, of course, MJF is going to shove him. Like, he's a scumbag, dude.
The moment, to me, it was great because it's like, all right, so MJF's setting up. He's like, I'm going to knock Jericho over. And Sammy's like, no, we surrender, right? And so then the part that they dragged it out so much because it was filling TV time, right? You know, but then it was like MJF gives Jericho the hand. Like, I'm going to help you up. And immediately it's like, why is Jericho not slapping his hand away here? Like, why would you take MJF's hand in this moment?
Okay,
and then MJF picks him up and immediately pushes him. And it's just like the most obvious move ever. But I do have to say, MJF saying thank you, you know, when thank you Jericho has been a thing. Like, MJF ending it with thank you. I was like, all right, that
was
worked.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And MJF, by the way, even though bladed, but like he looked really good bladed. Like I've honestly never seen him look. He looked like a demon. Like he looked like possessed. And I was so impressed actually with how cool he looked in that moment. Although again, the landing was dumb. But yeah.
And like the finish is my biggest takeaway about the idea of being a fan there in attendance live and how it didn't necessarily come out. Like the fall probably looked great. The moment before the fall, though, when you think that the finish of this match is just a surrender and you're like, I've sat here for 50 minutes and no one's about to die, had to have been like, I should have taken my refund like those 5 guys. Now, when Jericho gets tossed off, I'm sure for the fans in attendance, it looked a lot better. But yeah, the audible boos, I was right there with him. I was like, what the fuck kind of finish is this? I wanted to see somebody die. And then he did. And I was like, all right, I'm okay with this now. Like, it's like, this is a horrible camera angle, but whatever. At least it happened. It's the fact that counts, right? So.
Yeah, I remember people were saying they thought, like on the WrestleJoy, people thought that somebody was going to end up dying by like going through the roof of the cage, like back into the. That would have been legit. Like that would have been such a cooler finish.
That would have been very bad though. Like that's the one that fucked Mick Foley.
No. I'm not saying they wouldn't have had to
Some
a
type
hidden
of,
spot
yeah.
or whatever. There was a crash pad in the ring that they avoided for the whole rest of the match. Like the logistics of that are obviously a pain in the ass, but like
not
that would've
impossible
looked
when you
way
have
cool.
2 rings, though. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there is, in theory, definitely something they could have done in that capacity where it could have looked all right, and that would be crazy. I mean, and they will definitely run matches like this back where they have the ability to do crazier shit in the future. But yeah, I mean, it's the way of the world now, right? Like when we're not gonna see crazy shit done in an unsafe manner, we're gonna see it done in a manner that they probably do for like movies and shit, because that's how people don't die while doing the crazy shit you see in movies. But
And that's where I think that's the live versus tape problem that I keep harping about, right? Like I think if this had been a taped episode, which why would you tape Blood and Guts? But if it had been a taped episode, I think they would have just had camera angles that made it look badass.
it would have looked amazing.
And they would have zoomed way in on Jericho so that you only really saw his face and him being totally dead and not all the piles of cardboard around him.
Yeah, wouldn't have cut back to him nearly as many times while he's sitting there conversing with the refs and stuff. Like there wouldn't have been nearly as much of that if it was.
Yeah, they would
pre-taped.
not have shown all that, and they would have cut down all the dead space of MJF just being up there waiting to get the cue that it's time to go ahead and do your stuff. There
And
was
there wouldn't have
dead
been
time.
the commercial spot where they're climbing
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
enough, like all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I completely get the complaint or whatever with commercials. Like obviously they're going to have commercials. I saw some people being like, this should have been a specially sponsored match or something. Like you're not gonna see the same level of income with that though. I mean they're just not at that level. They're not at that WWE level where you have KFC sponsoring the first hour of the show, like has happened on Raw and stuff. I get the theory from fans. Like I get the thought. Like I wish that could have happened, but it's not
That's not
feasible
where
from a
AEW is,
business
no.
standpoint, unfortunately. But they still killed it. It was a great match. Everyone involved fucking put their bodies
They
on the
busted
line.
their ass.
Sammy posted a picture on social media today, and I was like, damn, dude, he had stitches on his shoulder and stuff. I was like, woof.
They were working pretty snug too. Like they were not holding back on their punches or anything.
No, which was cool. It added that element, right?
And mentioning the 9-year-old I was watching with, this was the match she was here for. 2 weeks ago, she saw Dynamite. They hyped it up. She wanted to come back for it, right? And this was what she was here for, and she was entranced through the whole thing. So
Of
I
course,
never
right?
used to say horrified.
no. She loves gore. We watched Mortal Kombat when that
nice.
the new Mortal Kombat, and she was like, I love all the gore and the blood and everything. So I knew she was going to be down for this, and she seemed to really, really enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did a good job with it. It was a great introduction of this type of match type to some fans who may not have ever seen something like this. So, yeah, overall, I think it was really good. The surrender thing was interesting. It's an interesting way to finish. Not for everybody, but they still gave fans what they wanted, right? Like you could do the surrender finish and very easily give people the craziness you want right after. So. And with someone like MJF, it just made it all that much better. I was like, I was commenting in one of my other group chats as I was watching it, and I was like, he better fucking do it, otherwise this is stupid. And then he did it, and I was like, we're good. This is great. So
There's no way that a bad guy is going to be honest about that. Just surrender, or I'm not going to throw him off. They're just always going to do it. So.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's where I was like, Sammy, you fool. And maybe
bad guy.
I think we might see Jericho maybe written off for a little bit from this. I think
Yeah,
he
I
wants
would-
to
of course.
he wants to do some tour stuff, and this might be his opportunity to get back on tour and do some music stuff. So
I legit hadn't even thought about that, but that would make a total amount of sense. Yeah.
It makes so much sense for him to take some time away right now. Also, he's up there in his age. He shouldn't be working all the time.
well, looking at it too, it looks like there's some Fozzy events planned this month.
Oh,
and,
okay.
A little
you
bit
go.
throughout the summer, so that makes a little bit of sense that.
I know he said on Talk is Jericho, he got in his contract that he can ask for time off to go tour whenever he needs to, and they got to work with him. So
And a lot of concerts and stuff are getting back open. This is almost better. AEW is in a much better position now than where we anticipated, because I know prior to the pandemic and stuff, we're probably October or something he's going to be going on tour, and we weren't sure if they necessarily had the star power to withstand not having Jericho there. And now they're just super comfortable without it. He could go for a month and they'll still be okay. And it'll be interesting to what happens to the group. How does the group feel about Sammy surrendering and still Jericho dying and all this? So.
and they just slot MJF into the spots they would have put Jericho in. It's not the same, but give MJF the chance to be the top heel.
Yeah. So I think that they definitely delivered a great Dynamite, and they built up to an even better Dynamite, I feel like, in terms of just the card that we're looking at next week. Because when this match came on, I was like, oh, man, the show is already almost over, right? Like, there's not a whole lot of matches on this one, so I was kind of surprised. Next week, we got plenty of matches, plenty of intrigue, like 3 title matches, I think. The tag title match, the TNT title match, the #1 contender match, and then Mox defending the U.S. title. So there's just a shitload going on next week for sure. So I'm excited. AEW's in a great spot, especially leading into pay-per-view time. That's what's even crazier. Like, we got, this week's show, then next week, then 2 weeks more of Dynamites before the pay-per-view. Like,
Yep.
very interesting. Well, no, I think, and that's something we should talk about, right? We haven't talked about it yet on the podcast, I don't think. I think the week of the pay-per-view, the go-home show is going to be on Friday, and then the show after the go-home show is going to be on Friday.
Oh, cool.
Due to some scheduling stuff with a sport.
Basketball?
Yeah, I think basketball playoffs.
I heard that.
So an interesting thing, and tough spot, I feel like, being moved right ahead of the pay-per-view, but they should be all right.
I thought it was interesting. This is another Sunday pay-per-view. So, like, the last one, Revolution, was their first Sunday pay-per-view, and they're right back to Sunday this time. So
yeah, it's going to be different. It's going to be very cool for the fans in Jacksonville, though, right? Because if you're in Jacksonville, you'll get to catch Dynamite on Friday night. They're doing a little bit of a fan fest or something on Saturday, and then the pay-per-view on Sunday. So you can make a whole weekend out of the pay-per-view down in Jacksonville, which is cool. It's just very strange as a consumer, and like obviously AEW, there's nothing they can do as a business, but having to shift off of your typical night right ahead of your pay-per-view and right after your pay-per-view is tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty rough because like some fans are going to be uninformed and tune in on Wednesday instead, and
And
See
then
basketball.
some basketball.
Is it going to be on after this game? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that would be me as a fan, is I'd be like, all right, it should be
Yeah.
on after, and then it's still not on. I'd be like, what the hell? So
You'd hope they'd announce it like at 8 p.m. And be like, "Hey, AEW Friday,
right.
tune in."
Well, and then do like some type of maybe hype show for the pay-per-view or something on Wednesday after the basketball game. That way
They
you don't.
definitely have done that before.
So
Yeah.
But it's a tough spot. That's all they can. But with it being the NBA playoffs, there's really nothing they could have done to potentially schedule around this or anything. So it's just the luck of the draw when you're on TNT now. And I think the more that they have to do it and still shift back to Wednesdays without changing anything else, the more people are just going to be casually used to that happening. So just like I
can
said,
definitely see there being like a 20-ish minute Road to Double or Nothing that plays Wednesday night. Like that would make a lot of sense.
yeah, just anything for real. But
Yeah.
and that's going to be another time where ratings are going to be interesting. It's not going to be a big deal, but if they're still pulling like even 800,000-900,000 on those Friday nights, being able to shift that much of their audience to a different night ahead of the pay-per-view is going to be great. So, yeah, lots of great stuff going on with AEW as we're getting closer to the pay-per-view. I'm getting more excited as we're getting a card put together for the pay-per-view. So, yeah, lots of good stuff. Did I miss anything, guys? We got both of you this week, so I'm pretty sure if I forgot anything, you guys got it, but I remembered the last thing at the last minute, so.
there was like 6 Jade Cargill promos this week.
Yeah, like I think
I don't think we missed anything. So.
a couple of times we've seen her wrestle, right? It's pretty clear she like worked that exact match like over and over again to get it down, right? And I'm assuming that where her training is at is to get her to be like able to free throw, like just do regular wrestling where it's not all totally worked out in advance and they haven't rehearsed every single move, and just get her more confident. And I think when they get her there, we're going to see her in the ring all the time.
That's
right?
when she'll have a manager, is like when she's
Right.
at her best.
And I just think she's not there yet, and obviously Ogogo's not, and so I think both of them are going to have a time where they can like shine and really do a lot of work, but they're just not there yet, and I think we're seeing that by neither of them really doing anything right now.
It's very interesting to watch the production of those two, and over the next 6 months to a year is really where it's going to be interesting, because right now we're so early in it, you can't really be too judgmental with it. But if they can develop in the way that Tay Conti, for example, was able to in a year with AEW, then it's going to be freaking mind-blowing at just their capability of taking athletic non-wrestlers and making them great. Not only the independent talent who can come in and already be great, but just some of these people who haven't wrestled before and help train them into being really, really profound athletes, which is going to be, I think, something that could be like a big breakthrough for AEW if they're able to do that with these two talent and more, because fans are so used to the typical indie talent, but we're not used to the Agogos and the Jades, where if they become great wrestlers, it's like, wow, I've never really seen this. It's something new for even the independent audience, which is what a big portion of AEW's audience is. So, yeah.
I do think their training has been excellent though. Like if you look at Chris Statlander, right? Before she got injured, she was solid. And then she got injured, and clearly, like, when she was on BT and all, she was probably healthy enough to potentially wrestle, and they just kept training her. And since she's been back, like, she's so incredibly good now. Like, she looks so much more confident. I think we're going to see the same thing with Anna Jay when she comes back. I'm hoping – I can only imagine John Silver if he's going to come back stronger too. Like they've shown the ability to like have people off of TV, train them really, really hard when we're not seeing it, and then put them on TV and they're incredible, right? So like I have every hope that's going to happen with Jade and Ogogo. Like I think that could happen with both of them for sure.
For sure. It's just a matter of seeing it. And that's the thing is I get more and more confident with it, but with the Jades and the Ogogos especially, just being those athletic superstars who aren't trained in the ring as much, you have a little bit more of a hesitation, but they have, like you said, their training that they've done with all the superstars up to this point, they really haven't gone wrong. So the confidence is definitely there. But I think we got it covered. That's about all. We got all the AEW news and discussion in this week that we needed to. Johnny, let them know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
Well, my Twitter account is iJohnnyD, and that's usually what I hang out on social media, and that's it. So,
okay. iJohnnyD. How about you, Zevo?
Yeah, I'm a Zevo1979 on Twitter, and also Zevo Bolus on Twitch, which I'm still not streaming a ton on Twitch right now, but every now and then.
Cool. How about you, AJ?
You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at AJTheFitzy.
I need to get something that says, it doesn't matter. Just for you, AJ. Y'all can find me on Twitter at 2SweetElite and on Instagram at Andrew Kasier. You can find the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/AllElitePod. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/AllElitePodcast. If you're watching us there, make sure you smash that subscribe button, brother. You can also find us on Twitter at AllElitePodcast. We will be back next Tuesday to run down next week's Dynamite card and anything else. Until then,